Welcome back to Lessons from Last Time. I am Ken Perry and your co-host here.
I am Kirk Faulkner, I think.
Yeah, and we're back together. I've done some without you, and it just feels...
It was hurtful, but
I know, it feels like I'm taking you out of the equation, but you know, I love you 100%.
The last few that have happened have been absolutely magnificent. I was excited to see a friendship turn into a podcast guest, a friend of Allison, who was our teammate here, and that turned into a magnificent podcast. And of course, with Jean-Louis being on the podcast, that was exceptional as well. So
it's cool. And since our last podcast, I've actually been able to give a keynote called Lessons from Last Time, where we are taking lessons from all of these conversations we've had and trying to deliver help for people who need, you know, maybe they're going through something that we've dealt with on the podcast, or they just need to hear some, you know, this one thing, like this one piece will get them over the edge. So
this has the potential to turn into one of those Kirk and Ken riff for an hour podcast. But
let's
I wanted to
do that.
remind you, we have a guest here today.
Is that he's right there?
He's
isn't
right
he?
there.
Okay.
Welcome, Aaron Van Cleave.
Way to pick up the slack,
dude.
Yeah.
Welcome, Aaron Van Cleave. First of all, thank you you drove up on very short notice.
From
It's a beautiful
Salem,
day,
not just
man.
from Portland, but from Salem.
Yeah, luckily, you know, have a little old BMW convertible, so just
Oh,
took
there
the
you go.
top
That's a
off.
day for it.
Dude.
It's perfect, man. It's
That's so
perfect.
awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm on the phone with Aaron and I'm like, dude, we need to get you up here. And I'm like, Allison, see when we can get him up here. And then all of a sudden I look on my calendar and here you are.
You're booked.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was cool. You guys have an incredible system, and now I get to see it all. And it's, you know, you've mastered kind of all the sets and the team, and it's beautiful to see everyone behind it, because I've just met Ken.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that you guys have incredible operations and productions, but it's cool to see it in person.
I'm super proud of this group. Every time we walk somebody through the office, they're like, holy crap, like this is really an amazing team. And it really is. And I appreciate you coming. It's a lot of years in the making.
Yeah.
With you now, I want to start with, we've interviewed, like, let's take Bill Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Bill Hart. We've interviewed all these people who've been in the industry, you know, a lot of years.
Yeah.
You're one of the few who we've interviewed who you're fairly new.
Yeah.
Even though you've been doing it a while. So how long have you been in mortgage?
It was 8 years, April 4th.
And as we speak right now, you're not in mortgage for
Technically-
about a week.
Technically.
Yeah. So
Technically in between.
8
So,
years
yeah.
though. So walk me through how you like found this industry and really start before that. Like what led you to this place?
Yeah, life is pretty cool. I wanted to teach and coach. I love coaching. I love sports, and I like teaching. I had a lot of great mentors that had an extremely impactful impression on my life. So that somehow, in that design, had a bad biology teacher. I wasn't that great at school, you know, I was the C student, right? And then had a tough exit, walked out, and I was working at a golf course in a coffee shop. And then all of a sudden I start helping this guy that's a branch manager at a mortgage company. And I was thinking, this is going to be my perfect vessel to get into real estate, because at that time you grow up watching HGTV and you say, I can dress nice and I can sell a home, but all of a sudden you find yourself driving, you know, helping him on odd jobs and whatnot. He liked how I worked. He liked that I showed up and worked hard. So he texted me asking me to go and work, drive him and some clients up to a Blazers game. I'm sitting there in his brand new GMC Denali, you know, in the hills in West Salem, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting with some of the top producers in real estate sitting behind me, and we're, you know, shooting our, you know, fun stuff, and they're having a good time and whatnot. And then I start to think, oh, this is perfect. I kind of know where I'm going to hang my license. I literally had bought the class to start my real estate license. And then David's sitting right there and says, well, have you ever thought about mortgage? At that time, I'm like 19, 20 years old. I just know it's, even if I knew it was a payment on a house, that's it. So basically through conversations, I jump in and he says, yeah, the advantage right now is the average age of a loan officer is 58 at that time. And he says, the advantage is...
Not that that's old.
No, that's very young.
Young, yeah. Exactly. What does Gary Vee say? You're still young, right? It doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
Yeah, you're a baby. Yeah. So, but anyways, so he basically tells me in 2 years, if you work your tail off, you'll make 6 figures without a doubt. And that's without school at that time, because at that time you still had to get your master's degree to teach in Oregon. So I'm like, okay, it's 4 more years of school because I've been through 2 at 𝗪𝗵𝗲 Community College. And
Mm-hmm.
then, so basically everything that he says comes to fruition. I work my tail off. They were partnered with a really cool agency, one of the biggest in Willamette Valley. So I got to grow with them. And that was huge. I was with them for almost 5 years, and that catapulted, my career,
Mm-hmm.
and got me kind of rubbing shoulders with some big pivotal people, pillars in the community, in the real estate community in my area. So yeah, that's really how it
Wow.
started. And
I'm going to take you right back to what you said at the beginning, because you mentioned a biology teacher and you mentioned a lot of C's. So let's break those down. Do you
sure.
have a biology teacher story there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I didn't want to delve too much into it. I've told my story a little bit on a podcast before, but yeah, absolutely. So much like you, ADHD, I didn't realize, and I even wasn't really aware of it until I started working in the mortgage industry a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
So having that, I was working, I had to spend time working extremely diligent and deliberate when I was working on any project. In that class, I was absolutely working with my friend that was a valedictorian. Spent a lot of time. Then she calls me up to the front of the class in the middle of one of our, I don't even know if we call them classes back then,
Mm-hmm.
or the professor does, and says, "You're going to fail my class." And I said, "Well,
In front of
I
people?
just got to be on the last test." Yeah, in front of people. So I picked up my backpack, left, and never went back.
Wow.
Yeah,
Never went back to biology class?
never went back to 𝗪𝗵𝗲. I mean,
What
I've
was the
Wow.
I've
motive?
finished my online class, but yeah.
What was the motivation behind a teacher using that
And,
tactic?
and that's the thing is, man, is I care about people deeply, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to give people, every type of way to make things happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you get something like that, especially young, when you're a 19-year-old kid, uh, what do you expect them to do? How do you expect them to react?
Mm-hmm.
So that changed my trajectory completely, 100%. And
Wow.
it made me think about what is my purpose? What is my life going to look like early? And then it paid dividends to get into the mortgage industry young, because I could take my licks. I could experience success and still, take the blows and whatnot of understanding this is what it's like to lose a huge relationship. This is what it's like to win a huge relationship. This is what it's like to make $100,000 when you're young, and then also now I didn't even experience the college life, then make some stupid mistakes when you're young, and now learn from that and still have your full life ahead of you.
So
So,
interesting that college is controversial right now. And like, should people go to college? Does college matter anymore? And I always say the thing about college for me and for a lot of people I know is it might give you that one moment that's the pivotal moment in your entire life. It's Mr. Tui telling me that I have something for speaking and I should think about speaking more and taking more speech classes. And that changed my life from law enforcement into what I
hmm,
do now,
Yeah.
literally at that age. For you, it was a negative impact that made you go, okay, I'm out, and it completely rerouted your trajectory.
yeah, and with that being said, school is, especially, it's super pivotal for you to understand yourself through school too.
Hmm.
Where did I have my most impact? It was being a leader on the sports team. It was being ASB president and all these different things, and all of those experiences, being able to speak in front of, uh, at a assembly, and being able to also speak one-on-ones, leading young life and wildlife, and have intentional, meaningful conversation. There's so many different components that come to, and that also from my dad. My dad is a great sale, he wouldn't necessarily ever call himself a salesman, but he's really good with relationships. He's built an extremely, good business based off his deep relationships with people and him showing up and doing what he's going to say.
Hmm.
So all of these things allowed me to be able to have confidence when it's hard to have confidence when you're young and you're getting referred doctors or lawyers and whatnot and expected to perform.
Hmm.
When you're 21, who am I to, to run someone's entire financial situation and give them a home loan at 21? Well, I was confident, and I could understand it and pick it up quickly, and I could speak to anyone.
I always think, who's this for? Like every podcast we record, it's who do I want to listen to this? Like who are we trying to speak to in this moment? And I'm just going to take it in this direction because I think any kid listening to this who has ADHD is going to benefit. Parents of kids with ADHD are going to benefit because we're going to dive in a little bit more.
Yeah.
You have ASB president, you said?
Mm-hmm.
ASB president, you're liked by a lot of people. You've got your social game sounds like it was super strong.
Yeah.
Your grade game wasn't.
No.
And when people refer to success, oftentimes in high school, they'll tell you about their GPA, and that's how we grade success in high school. It sounds like you were an incredibly successful kid in high school if you measure it by the things that you're actually going to use in your life going forward.
And don't get me wrong, there are areas that I was successful in school. You know, history, I love history. Writing, I love English. Math, science, not good at. So it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, math, algebra I was actually good at, but everything else, not very good at. It took me forever to even learn how to do division, like on paper at a young age. So there's pieces, you know, there's places like you, basically if you try to put you in a box and whatnot, you're gonna throw fits, right? But if you allow we talked about this yesterday and we can delve into this more, but you allow you to be in your creative genius and your passion and pursue the things that you actually deeply care about. And as long as that is within your work, then you're going to perform.
Yeah, you find your stage.
Yeah.
And you found being able to speak in public, being able to speak to people, being able to think creatively, the things that aren't typically rewarded inside of a school environment. You found your way there. When you look back at it, I want to know, do you think I was very successful in high school, or is your initial thought, I was not very successful, but
Oh yeah. And I'm always the positive guy. You know,
yeah.
I think the lasting relationships that you still have teachers and counselors today that reach out to you and just tell you that they're proud of you on Facebook. And not that I think that we need to show this most beautiful version of Ken or Aaron or Kirk or whatever, but by being impactful and being, you know, in your community every day and actually pouring into the things that do matter, that's what makes a difference, you
You
know.
talked about in the call the other day, you talked about mentors in your life who talked to you about two things, primarily work hard. And I don't want to say utilize your sphere because that almost sounds like you're objectifying them, but to be connected to your sphere and make sure that they're aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that sounds like it's kind of been your approach to life in general. I mean, you're in roles in high school that are all about connecting. Those two pieces of advice, those fed you, and maybe they were intrinsic to you, but they also fed you moving forward.
Yeah, and that's developed completely differently, especially and this is a cool thing that we want to talk about of lessons from last time. Being able to connect with people is different these days than it was 5 years ago. It's different than it was 10 years ago. It's different than it was in high school. It's different than it is in the business world and different types of businesses. And I think that personal brand and you actually being vulnerable and transparent and honest and being connected to, you know, as many good things as possible, you know, coaching, all these different things, like you said, are intrinsic to having a lifeline of opportunity, and a lifeline of people that want to be a part of what you're doing. So before COVID was kind of my lesson from last time. I had experienced from 2016 to 2020, I experienced some incredible success at a young age. COVID hits, the world shuts down, and very much, I'm sure Ken and I talked about this, but very much all of the social aspect and dynamic of my life essentially just switched off. And that had a serious impact on me. I couldn't run around. I couldn't meet with people. I couldn't be in person. I couldn't, you know, there was no sports to coach. There wasn't anything that was vital to my purpose, I felt, right? So I had to dive deep in myself. I drank too much. I woke up late every day. I wasn't exercising. So this just kind of just was weight on me that I eventually had to shake off. And I had to recreate myself.
What was the
And
catalyst for that? What was the catalyst that led to you going, hang on a minute?
I like that you use the word catalyst. That is that means a lot. That word means a lot to me. The catalyst was multiple things. It was being disappointed in who I'd become.
What you saw in the mirror?
Hmm.
Yeah.
It was not being in good shape. It was not being, not practicing what you preach. You talk about health, you talk about success, you talk about all these different things, you talk about what works. How can you tell someone to do something? It's like a coach that's, and there's coaches that are overweight, sorry to say, but it's like, yeah, a weight coach that's 300 pounds, and not in shape. How can you listen to them? How are you going to feel motivated by them? Right? Unless they've trained the world's best or
Sure,
whatever,
sure.
right? But the catalyst, even recently, was I've got a gal that I am absolutely in love with, and she is the most incredible, detailed person I've ever met. She gets up and she is very, very critical about her day. She knows that she needs a couple hours before, she works at 9. So she gets up at 4:45, goes to the gym, works out, has time to relax, also organize her day, get things set up. I mean, and for me, I started following that deeply and getting up. But then I would get back from the gym and I'd kick my shoes up and I'd relax and I wouldn't utilize that time to get ahead, right? I would just put, kind of reading scripture is big for me, right? Because that kind of really sets my brain up in a very peaceful, purposeful way every morning. But after that, I would put prospecting. But prospecting is way too broad. I needed to be more detailed and more critical about that. Of, okay, so I got to go through my text messages, and I got to do outreach. And then I also have to look at all my pre approved buyers and then all my buyers in the pipeline. And then what agents have I spoke to? Who can I reach out to? Who can I set up something new with? I wasn't very detailed within that. And me realize it took me a while to realize. And then once I started doing that, then the successes started coming. Of the more detailed I am, and the more I perform within that detail, the better expectation I can have for a byproduct of success from that.
It strikes me that a key component to coming out of that period of time was the ability to honestly self-reflect, which is something that not everybody possesses, but everybody is capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to take time and look in the mirror and not really like what you see, but instead of just getting depressed because you don't like what you see,
Yeah.
coming up with a plan to work out of those things. That seems like a powerful part of your journey.
Yeah, man. You name it all. I've been stupid. I've ruined like amazing relationships, and because of that vulnerability and that transparency, I've been able to build some of those relationships back too. And that's like in any relationship. If I break your heart, hopefully you got it within yourself that if I prove myself in such a way and am on, we all should have grace and forgive, but you should see people should have to prove it too. So, whether you're or not you want to forgive me right now, yeah, I'll prove it back, and this is what you're going to see, the body of work that I want you to see.
You said something on our call, be a human people want to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to what you're talking about right now is if you've broken your relationship with Ken somehow, you've done something, said something hurtful, whatever, but you maintain that consistency of being a human that people want to connect with. Eventually, Ken, if he's a human that people want to connect with, there's going to be opportunity for grace to transcend whatever injury occurred.
Well, and the cool thing is think about what you guys have here. No one really wants to sit down and watch or go to continuing education. You guys have made it you guys have pushed a wave of creativity and fun within something that is kind of dry and not cool. And you guys have now put that in a light of excitement and what's next. And now when I'm watching the stuff, I see there's a human behind that. There is a connection there. And what before I ever met Ken, I felt connected to him, right? Or to the people that are here, that have fun personalities and that, it was just it's a creative twist. And that's what I want to do in my business too, is I don't want to be like every other loan officer. I want to be unique and distinguish myself from other loan officers or other people in business, or, whatever that looks like. So it was vital for me to recreate myself, but also be creative within that.
Mm.
Yeah, because you don't want to get rid of like what, your God-given gift of
Sure.
creativity and the way that you see things. And I mentioned in a podcast the other day, unhinged. Like I'm not hinged. I don't need things to be a certain way. In fact, that's boring. I want things to be way more fun than that.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you're being unhinged. Your world gets better when you connect with somebody who's hinged a little bit, who is connected to the things that need to get done in the time they need to get done.
We need structure.
Right. But you were able to team with somebody.
Mm.
And I'll never forget when Mindy said, we were in college. I got married at 20 and I was, had already done 3 years of a 4-year degree and needed 2 more. Don't do the math. And I was talking to Mindy, and I always I had a 2.33 in junior college GPA. And so Mindy goes, why don't you get straight A's? And I'm like, what? And I just had this habit of not getting good grades. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, if you try, I bet you could do straight A's. And I'm like, try? What does try look like?
Same exact conversation I've had.
Is it really?
Same exact conversation.
I mean, she's doing homework. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, homework. I'm like, why? She goes, because that's what you do. And I'm like, no, it's not what I do.
Anything you want to do, you can do.
Yeah.
You are capable of it all. Like, there's no excuse. Stop pointing the blame elsewhere.
Yeah.
Look at leaders lead themselves first.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny though, that it was so helpful. I mean, we'll be 29 years is our anniversary coming up of being married. And I've told her a million times, I am about 10% as successful as I am without you. 90% of my success comes from waking up and having her go, modeling that behavior that I don't understand. I don't understand organization. I don't understand structure. Like, you've created habits now that you didn't have because you saw it modeled in somebody that you looked up to, right?
Absolutely.
And that made you go, well, wait a second, I probably could do this. Was it easy to create those habits, or was it like, did you find yourself laying on the couch sometimes going, dang it, no, I gotta get up?
Still, and I think every day we still, humans want to take the easiest route. Mm-hmm. We always do. We always do. We're always in a constant wrestle with our minds, constantly. I mean, there is always well, I could just do this, so you have to create, kind of urgency. Mm-hmm. And you have to feel, well, if I do this, how will it affect that? Everything has a cause and effect too. So when I do slack and when I do sleep in and whatnot, that also affects, doesn't just affect me, that affects her, that affects future earnings, that affects, and it just goes down, the path. Mm-hmm. So it took me a long time, especially being young, to realize, Aaron, every last thing that you do does have a serious effect. What if you missed that phone call with that could have been that client that could have turned into this and this and that, So understanding the urgency within helping people is paramount, and it's a big thing. It's a big thing to help people buy a home, right? Mm-hmm. It's a very critical thing, and it's not something light. It's not like I'm just selling donuts at 7-Eleven or whatever. It's a little bit more. It's a big deal, to help people invest in their biggest investment, most people's biggest investments in their life.
If you are watching this podcast and you're in the mortgage industry and you haven't checked out the Knowledge Coop, you definitely need to dive into the Knowledge Coop. In there, you will find content and community that will help you grow as an individual by learning everything there is to know about the mortgage industry. If you think you know everything, just dive in and take some classes, because there's always something more you can learn. To be successful in this business, you've got to continually learn. In addition, if you're a company and you want to teach your people in your own environment, we've got that in the Knowledge Coop Enterprise Services. So reach out to us, check out knowledgecoop.com. Definitely join Coop Plus. Let's get back to the podcast.
I think we reach those moments in life where what has worked doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And whether the market's changed or we've changed or just the environment we live in has changed. And you talked in our conversation about adaptability, and you used a sports analogy because it's where you come from, but you talked about, sometimes I got to adjust my pitch or my golf swing because what has worked isn't working. Maybe some physiology's changed with you, or you're not feeling right, or you pulled a muscle or whatever.
Sure.
That adaptability has served you well in the business as it pertains to how you engage with the marketplace. I want you to share, if you wouldn't mind, that
Hmm.
story with, it's not called the Parade of Homes down in Salem. It was called something
Tour
else,
of homes.
Tour of Homes.
Yeah.
Your decision to utilize video and then to give your talent or your gift away. Talk about how that adaptability to a changing market served you with respect to your business.
Yeah, so I got a relationship, one of the relationships I'm talking about back with a builder and also an agent that I'm really good friends with. That kind of started positioning my mind of thinking leverage, right? So now I am helping and representing them and doing some video work for them with some other. Obviously, I'm not the creative that can create the videos, but that made me start thinking of, well, if I'm helping them promote themselves extremely well, why can't I do this to others? And why can't I become the top kind of new construction, in the financing sector that's different, that's unique? And the biggest thing that builders don't do is, I'm not going to say all of them. There's a lot of builders that represent themselves very well, but a lot of them don't have a videographer or an aerial photographer or videographer, and they're not showing. In the Tour of Homes is the most premier. It's just like the Street of Dreams, but in the Willamette Valley in Salem. None of them really had a video or anything. It was just people walking through and taking, maybe photos. And even, I'm not going to blast them, but even Street of Dreams just does photos on their stuff. Why? The performance, the algorithms work. So I donated videos to each builder on the tour, and that allowed me to connect with other builders. And now I have some other builders too that I represent, and that is an extremely dynamic and powerful thing to show them. Oh, this is $1 million home. It should get promoted. I should have pride in that, right? We all have egos, right? Every business owner has an ego. What's the best way to stroke someone's or a company's ego is to make them look good and to promote them well. So having a more keen and detailed eye for, this is something easy that I can take one of my, extremely talented guys and go shoot this in a more dynamic way than we've seen, put some cool music behind it, and all of a sudden, wow, you got a cool production.
There's also an act of generosity. And you go back to your statement about be a human that people want to connect with. You take a idea and you turn it into an action, which turns into a product, and you give that product away to people at the Street of Dreams or Tour of Homes or whatever.
Yeah.
And, of course, your hope is that through this act, maybe I'll get traction with somebody. We can have a conversation about business opportunities, but there's no preconceived agreement that that's going to happen. You're still giving away your best efforts. You're being a human that people want to professionally connect with in that regard. And then it turns into some opportunities.
Yeah. And some people think, well, Aaron, these homes, you're not even representing them. You're not even necessarily selling them, but it still can be used as marketing.
Right.
And there still was 2 or 3 people that reached out that bought homes from those videos. I would probably say more, arguably, because that's my social resume. Now those videos get hosted on my stuff. So whenever people are scrolling through and seeing, wow, Aaron's had another beautiful, or guys did another beautiful home today. Well, now they reach out. How can I buy this? Where is this at? It's social media in a sense has turned into my greatest lead gen system.
But you're not. When loan officers try to create social media, a lot of times in the beginning, it's just like, so what do I do? And we see stages of it where
I'm Tom.
Yeah. I mean, before video, when they're just using social, they're like, here's a pumpkin pie recipe because it's Thanksgiving. And a lot of these companies, they're like, we'll give you posts to use. And those posts, they're not at all communicating who the person is as a human, right? And then you get some people that are like, okay, now I'm going to do the hi, I'm Tom. Did you know you can do loans right now on FHA? Call me for more. And it's about me getting business, right? I'm going to do a video that's very clearly me out there trying to get people to send me deals.
Yeah.
What you did is said, I think this would be super cool if I did this thing because this is not being done right. And I'm coaching this kid who's trying to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, you have to, if you watch Shark Tank, most people on Shark Tank are like, well, I was using this thing and I'm like, why isn't this better? And then I made it better. Like, that's the best heart to start a company with, is like, why isn't anybody doing this? This is very frustrating. I can create something better than that. Right. You saw the way that builders were advertising their homes. You're like, this is really, just in general, this could be done better. And I kind of have a passion for this. You followed that passion in, and it's one of the ways you communicate who you are on social. But I've never seen you do anything that's like, hey guys, guess what I can do for your loan? You're just like, oh my gosh, so cool. Like, is it adjacent? It's like marketing adjacent, but it's actually what works. You're not directly trying to get people to use you. You're just trying to do cool stuff using your gifts. And it just so happens it makes people follow you more.
Yeah. And we think about, and this is a big thing. So we think about 100 people that are following you. Not very much, right? That's our concept of he doesn't have a lot of followers. But what if we put 100 people in this office right here? It'd be packed, right? So, and if you have 100 people that are intentionally listening to you, that's impact. That's powerful. That's influence. So having a type of brand or business that has depth and has vulnerability and has honesty, transparency, and also creativity, all those things should come into building your brand and giving it a, giving your brand your personality. And if you're able to do that, then all of a sudden people start listening, and you should be 80% lifestyle. And just turns out that 80% of my lifestyle, some way, shape, or form, is kind of connected to my area geographically, what I like to do, and all these different things. But everything kind of all can tie back to somehow being connected to what I do.
Well, the really cool thing about the mortgage business and real estate is everybody, if they're older than 18, is somehow connected to real estate or a mortgage, if they're or will be soon.
Yeah.
So that your lifestyle, the promotion of the things you do with social media and lifestyle, your business part's going to connect, because at some point everybody's going to need to buy or sell a home and get finance for a home. So it's really organic. It's really an organic way to present who you are to the marketplace.
When I've trained loan officers, younger or older or whatever, the first thing that I do is have them create a sphere list. Teachers, coaches, friends, colleagues, past coworkers, all of their family, even the ones that, hey, I haven't talked to them in 10, 12 years, but I remember their name. They're a sweet person. We had whatever it is, all those people would technically probably watch you, or, like to see a Christmas card from you, like to see whatever that is, any type of marketing material, because they know, like, and trust you. And you instigating that is vital, because those are the first people that are going to send you business.
Well, lessons come from a lot of places, and of course, we're titled Lessons from Last Time. This doesn't directly fit into a last time, but you talked on the phone about a gentleman you met down in your area, a vineyard owner, 85-year-old man. Talk a little bit about that relationship and what you gained from the experience of knowing this guy.
Yeah. So this guy owns a vineyard and not just vineyard, it's a vineyard and all sorts of agriculture, and now he's transformed that into a vineyard and brewery, and it's a beautiful place outside of north of Kaiser. But he's, mid 80s, probably, older gentleman, has all these classic cars and all these different things. And I hear him talking to someone, and he says, I'm still learning. I'm not perfect. I learn things every day. Listen and learn. I'm never going to stop learning. And that's how that trickles down to his family that works there and all these different things. I think just shows his humility. And humility is a big thing, right? Especially for the leaders, to have. We always should be learning. I don't know it all. You don't know it all. But as we figure out more things, then there's always something new to learn. And it's cool because his son works there, and he is just a sponge too. And he has a really cool look at, grapes and wine, and very, very much a byproduct of his dad. So it's cool to hear him talk about it, because he's also like, we're still young in this industry. We want to learn this stuff. We want to do it right, and all these different things. I've never heard someone speak with so much passion about that industry. And there's a lot of people that are passionate about wine, don't get me wrong, but his was unique to me.
It's fascinating because, I don't want to draw too many parallels, but if you own a vineyard and you're in the wine business, you are affected by so many things that are outside of your control.
Oh God.
Weather,
Fires,
mold, rot,
yeah,
pests, fire down in Napa,
Napa,
Sonoma
yeah.
decimated some really prominent
Right.
wineries. And there's nothing you can do about that except adapt when those things happen and figure out a way forward. And how parallel to the mortgage business is that?
Yeah. And the cool thing is with the fires and stuff that we had a couple years ago, there's some people that made some extremely creative wine from that. Some people would have just thrown it away.
Unique flavors, I bet.
Yeah. But if you blend it, all of a sudden it creates something beautiful. It
Wow.
creates a different type. So that's one of their best-selling things in what people would call a bad year for grapes. So that's creativity in itself. Being able to pivot and to
A couple of things are so cool
adjust.
about that. One, that an 85-year-old man is saying, I'm still learning. I'm not going to stop learning. And that a young guy like you would listen to an 85-year-old man, because it's real easy for younger generations to go, done, gone. He might have done some cool stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm past learning anything from anyone that old. And
Yeah.
you were smart enough to know that, nah, not really. There's a lot to be learned by almost anybody we encounter. Just a powerful illustration, I thought. I loved you sharing that yesterday on our call.
Yeah, and there's one other, kind of cool story that I've heard recently, and it also engages with a guy that has, what did Muhammad Ali have?
Parkinson's.
Parkinson's. Guy has Parkinson's, right? He's a pastor out in Albany, I believe, and he cross-country bike rides every year.
Oh, wow.
It's like late 70s or something. The only time that his Parkinson's subsides is when he's riding
Ooh.
across country, like putting his body through that type of pain, right? So he kind of, and it's through a friend that heard this story of he was speaking to this football team, and he said, seek out hard things intentionally. And I think that's massive for people to hear of good things don't come from ease and from comfort. And so, and it came at the perfect time because I just lost two of my, big toenails from walking for a suicide walk for veteran, suicide awareness.
Oh, wow.
And I did 50 miles in a day. And
Jeez.
it was tough. I was wrestling with my mind constantly. And that affirmation came after that. So it just shows, oh yeah, I still don't have, they're growing back, but seeking out hard things intentionally is something that's kind of in my DNA. I had both my hips replaced when I was 23. That's what
wow.
not a lot of people know. So I want to bring depth, and I want to encourage people to bring depth and tell their story,
Well, it's cool for me to sit here because I'm sitting with two guys who, acknowledge their challenges with ADHD, except neither one of you accepted those as limitations. You just
No.
accepted them as necessities to modify what I do so that I'm not derailed or crippled by this. And it's really cool to sit here and listen to the two of you talk about that particular aspect of who you are and how it's not limited you. It's just actually, you would say, and I've heard you say it many times, it's actually propelled you.
Superpower.
Oh, it is a superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah. The trick is knowing. I mean, the one thing I would tell anybody with ADHD is don't blame yourself for the things you're not great at. You're not great at them because you have a brain difference, right? So the trick is let's go figure out how we can operate and do the things that I love to do and I'm great at, and get support around me to do those things that I'm not going to be able to do. There's certain things that it's just an absolute struggle to get to a point that you can achieve these things or that you can accomplish these things, but there are other people who are amazing at that. And so put yourself in a position, if you can, where other people are making you or giving you the freedom to be yourself, because then there's no limit.
Which is, of course, true for anybody, whether they have ADHD or not. There's things that are limiting in me that I'm incapable of doing or aren't very good at. And if I'd be wise to be aware of those things, not so that I can be crippled by them, but so I can go find other resources to come alongside and do that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's the big lesson, is make sure that you're surrounding yourself like what you did with this amazing young woman. You've got her giving you that, like being an example for you and kind of guiding the way in the areas that were super dark for you. You can't really, you're feeling your way around. She actually has a flashlight and she's going to help you with those things. And then you can now be yourself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
I think it's kind of cool that mentors are attracted to people who will probably become mentors. Mentors see something in people. They see that spark, and they are willing to mentor you, whatever capacity that comes. And it often is the case, not always, but it often is the case that those who have been mentored become mentors because they see what it's done for them and because it's part of their DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we need to be poured into and we need to pour into others.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, man, what an incredible conversation.
Absolutely.
This is one that could go on for a long time,
Sure.
but in the interest of preserving our viewership and for being
Sorry,
respectful
this
of
has
your
gone
time,
way off,
how can people get a hold of you if they want to know more about you or be
Yeah.
to do alone in Salem or anywhere else for that matter?
Yeah. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn are great.
All the usual
we can drop
suspects.
my email probably somewhere here, and phone number is fine. Call me, text me, whatever. Yeah. I like to be open to anyone that wants to reach out, talk to me, whatever. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, I've got one last question for you.
What do you got?
If you were to have the power to go back to 10-year-old Aaron, who's just hanging out on the playground, you walk up to 10-year-old Aaron and you want to give 10-year-old Aaron a piece of advice based on everything you've learned so far in life, what would that piece of advice be?
That is an incredible question. I would tell him to do things that make a lasting difference. And things that like deeply resonate with me are music. I love to travel. So like language, I would tell him, Aaron, start learning. You're never too young to start learning. And the deeper you learn, in learning the piano or guitar or getting interested in, getting your pilot's license or speaking a language, those are going to have that lasting depth and impression that I would want to have right now. Outside of anything that I do, sure, it could help benefit me in other ways too. But I would tell him, learn now. Begin to, make. This is gonna help you, and this also is something that brings you joy. So yeah,
That's good stuff.
It's so funny how we never get the same answer from anybody. Like
No, we
everybody's
don't.
10-year-old self needs something different.
And the perspective of somebody who's, say, 65 being asked that question, and the perspective of someone like you and everyone in between, those perspectives are so different. But that's an incredible response. I really dig that.
Dude, thanks for swinging by. This
Thank
has
you
been
for
a
having
very,
me.
very cool podcast
it's
episode.
been a privilege. Thank you guys. Sorry for talking so much.
No,
You didn't.
did
It was
great.
perfect.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you.